Lviv region, Western Ukraine. 23:47 hours on January 8, 2026. Freezing winter night. Temperature -8 Celsius. Clear sky studded with stars. City slept, unaware of approaching danger. At this moment, early warning systems detected ballistic missile launch from Kapustin Yar test range in Astrakhan region of Russia. Distance to target, approximately 2,000 kilometers. Flight time, 15 minutes. Terminal velocity, 13,000 kilometers per hour. This is 11 Mach, speed at which missile heats from atmospheric friction to temperatures exceeding 4,000 degrees Celsius. Russia launched Oreshnik, intermediate-range ballistic missile with estimated cost from $40 to $100 million, according to expert assessments. This was only second combat firing of this weapon after strike on Dnipro in November 2024. Target: critical infrastructure object in Lviv region, presumably Bilche-Volytsia underground gas storage facility. 7 minutes later, missile would reach target. Damage would be significant, but actual military effectiveness would be catastrophically low relative to resources expended. This would become another demonstration of how most expensive weapon is not always most effective, how propaganda value supersedes military expediency, how political considerations eclipse economic logic. This happened 3 days ago. Missile debris collected by SBU for analysis. Damage documented. Economic analysis reveals catastrophic cost-to-result ratio. This is what occurred that night. Intermediate-range ballistic missile Oreshnik represents experimental development that world first learned about on November 21, 2024. Vladimir Putin announced its use against Mach plant in Dnipro, calling it combat conditions testing. Missile was positioned as latest achievement of Russian military-industrial complex, allegedly having no world analogues. Technical specifications of Oreshnik are impressive on paper. Maximum range, 5,500 kilometers, enabling strikes across all Europe. Terminal velocity, up to 11 Mach, approximately 13,600 kilometers per hour. Missile equipped with multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle system. 6 warhead blocks, each carrying 6 sub-munitions. Total 36 strike elements falling on target at hypersonic velocity. Problem is that when used in conventional configuration without nuclear warheads, these strike elements are simply steel slugs, weighing approximately 5 kilograms each. Their destructive force based exclusively on kinetic energy of body moving at hypersonic speed. Upon ground impact, slug moving at 11 Mach creates shockwave and seismic effect, capable of destroying hardened underground facilities. However, cumulative strike capability of all 36 slugs, equivalent to approximately 6 Shahed cruise missiles with fragmentation warheads of 45 kilograms each. Difference is that 6 Shaheds cost maximum $300,000, $50,000 per unit. Oreshnik costs from $40 to $100 million, depending on expert estimate. Economic ratio: 1 Oreshnik equals 200 to 300 Shaheds in strike effect, while costing 130 to 300 times more. Military analysts unanimous in assessments. Oreshnik in conventional configuration is extremely expensive and highly ineffective weapon. Its real purpose: delivery of nuclear warheads, where accuracy ±50 to 100 meters is not critical, since nuclear explosion compensates inaccuracy with destruction radius. In conventional configuration, such accuracy makes missile unsuitable for precision targeting. Russian military expert Yan Matveev estimates cost of single Oreshnik launch at $100 million. Ukrainian aviation expert Valery Romanenko, more conservative, $40 million. Even at lower estimate, this is catastrophically expensive for weapon with such low combat effectiveness in conventional configuration. Production capacity further limits Oreshnik application. According to expert estimates, Russia capable of producing 2 to 6 such missiles per year. Putin claimed several ready products and serial production commencement, but reality is that factory capacity limited, components scarce, and mass production impossible without halting production of other critical missile systems. On January 8 at 23:47, air raid warning systems in Lviv region Detected alert about ballistic missile launch. Trajectory characteristics indicated medium-altitude flight. Missile ascended to approximately 150 kilometers altitude, corresponding to intermediate-range ballistic missile. Ukrainian air defense systems incapable of intercepting missiles of this class. Patriot complexes effective against short-range ballistic missiles like Iskanders, but against intermediate and intercontinental ballistic missiles, they are powerless. Theoretically, Oreshnik could be intercepted by THAAD complex capable of engaging targets at 100 to 150 kilometers altitude. But Ukraine lacks such systems. United States has only 8 THAAD complexes, 1 deployed in Israel, and probability of transfer to Ukraine near zero due to system cost. $3 billion per complex, $40 million per interceptor missile. Lviv residents heard air raid sirens at 23:42. Warning was specific. Ballistic threat moving at 13,000 kilometers per hour. Population advised to immediately shelter in bomb shelters or basements. Reaction time was minimal. Missile flew calculated ballistic trajectory. During boost phase, it gained altitude, traveling beyond atmosphere for majority of route. On terminal phase warhead section, separated from carrier rocket at approximately 100 kilometers altitude. Then separation occurred into 6 warhead blocks, each of which subsequently divided into 6 sub-munitions. 36 strike elements began independent guided descent toward targets. Accuracy problem with Oreshnik is that separating warhead blocks scatter across area with radius 50 to 150 meters from calculated aiming point. For nuclear warhead, this is insignificant. For conventional munitions, this means majority of sub-munitions may miss target even if it has dimensions of large industrial facility. At 23:52, residents of several settlements in Lviv region heard characteristic sound, sharp whistle of falling objects moving at supersonic velocity. Then followed series of explosions. Slugs weighing 5 kilograms each, moving at 11 Mach, slammed into ground, creating kinetic impacts of colossal force. Each slug, upon impact, released energy equivalent to explosion of approximately 50 kilograms TNT. Temperature from friction entering dense atmospheric layers reached 4,000 degrees, transforming slugs into incandescent projectiles. Upon ground impact, they penetrated 10 to 15 meters depth, depending on soil type, creating seismic wave propagating through Earth. Strike target, presumably, was Bilche-Volytsia underground gas storage facility, largest in Ukraine and one of largest in Europe. Nominal storage capacity, 17 billion cubic meters of gas. At strike moment, approximately 12 to 13 billion cubic meters stored, nearly half of Ukraine's total gas reserves. Storage created at depth 150 to 200 meters in porous sandstone formations, additionally protected by dense clay layers. This is natural geological structure converted for gas storage. Surface infrastructure includes complex pipeline system, gas compressor stations, gas measurement stations, and various technical buildings. Shockwave from 36 slugs falling at hypersonic velocity created powerful seismic effect. Through ground and underground spread shockwaves capable of destroying underground structures. Storage walls designed to withstand high gas pressure, subjected to impacts for which they were not designed. Directed kinetic strikes from surface. Lviv Mayor Andriy Sadovyi confirmed strike on critical infrastructure object. According to him, significant destruction occurred but exact damage extent not disclosed for security considerations. Civilian casualties avoided due to facilities' distance from residential areas. Head of Lviv Regional Military Administration, Maxim Kozitsky, confirmed infrastructure object damage without specifying which one. In settlement Rudny, located approximately 70 kilometers from Lviv, gas supply temporarily ceased due to automatic safety systems activating in response to shockwave. Observers recorded glow on horizon indicating possible gas leak and ignition. If strikes actually damaged underground storage walls, pressurized gas leak would be inevitable. Gas rising to surface through rock fractures would ignite from incandescent slugs or sparks. Now critical effectiveness analysis. Russia expended missile costing $40 to $100 million to damage infrastructure object. Even in maximum scenario, complete gas storage destruction, Economic effectiveness catastrophically low. Compare alternative methods achieving analogous result. 100 caliber cruise missiles costing approximately $1 million each could deliver massive infrastructure strike totaling $100 million, hitting multiple targets instead of one. 2,000 Shahed drones at $50,000 could attack hundreds of objects for total $100 million. Instead, Russia used one experimental missile for one strike on one target. Military logic absent. Economic expediency absent. Only propaganda motivation remains. Russian Ministry of Defense stated strike was response to terrorist attack by Kiev regime on president's residence in Novgorod region. This attack allegedly occurred December 29, 2025. Ukraine and US intelligence denied any attack on Putin's residence. Formal pretext was false. Real purpose of Oreshnik employment. Psychological impact and political signal. Strike on Lviv, located only 70 kilometers from Polish border, was message to NATO. Demonstration that Russia possesses strike means capable of reaching any point in Ukraine and Europe within minutes. Reminder of nuclear potential since Oreshnik can carry nuclear warheads. Western politicians reacted predictably. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas called strike unacceptable escalation and warning to Europe and USA. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, French President Emmanuel Macron, and German opposition leader Friedrich Merz conducted phone conversation condemning missile use and calling for transfer of additional air defense systems to Ukraine. Chinese publication Sohu wrote that strike demonstrated Western Ukraine vulnerability and undermined NATO confidence in regional security. German correspondent Christoph Warner from Die Welt stated strike may be hint to Europeans amid discussions of possible NATO troop deployment in Ukraine. From military standpoint, effect minimal. Infrastructure object damaged, but not completely destroyed. Gas storage facility, even with significant damage, can be partially restored. Strategic value of strike incomparable with expended resources. Ukrainian military experts were candid in assessments. Andriy Kramarov, Armed Forces of Ukraine reserve officer, called strike showmanship and noted that Kinzhals and Iskanders pose greater danger at significantly lower cost. Valery Romanenko emphasized Russia uses Oreshnik exclusively as psychological weapon since mass application economically impossible. Production limitations make Oreshnik strategically useless. Even with optimistic estimates, Russia can produce maximum 6 missiles per year. At cost $40 to $100 million each, this is $240 to $600 million annually. For this money can produce 600 calibers or 12,000 Shaheds, which would inflict incomparably greater damage. Sergei Auslander, military analyst, noted fundamental problem. Oreshnik was developed for nuclear warhead delivery, where low accuracy and high cost compensated by apocalyptic destructive force of nuclear explosion. In conventional configuration, missile unsuitable for mass application, too expensive, too inaccurate, too ineffective. Additional problem, political risk. Launch of intermediate or intercontinental range ballistic missile creates misunderstanding risk. Adversary doesn't know whether missile carries nuclear warhead and may react as to nuclear attack. This creates risk of uncontrolled escalation up to nuclear conflict. SBU demonstrated recovered missile debris. Stabilization and guidance unit, essentially missile brains, propulsion system components, orientation mechanism fragments, post-boost vehicle nozzles. Debris classified as physical evidence and prepared for transfer to in-depth examination. Western intelligence will gain access to technologies enabling development of more effective countermeasures. Numbers define operation absurdity. One missile costing $40 to $100 million. 36 strike elements with total equivalent power of approximately 6 Shahed drones. One infrastructure object partially damaged. 0 civilian casualties. Colossal expenditure. Minimal military effect. Maximum propaganda noise. This is modern warfare, where most expensive weapon used not for military victory, but for political gestures. Where $100 million spent on force demonstration instead of actual enemy damage. Where propaganda matters more than effectiveness. Where prestige eclipses logic. Missile launched, money spent, object damaged, effect questionable, and military analysts worldwide study case of how not to employ strategic weapons, how political considerations can completely eclipse military expediency, how most advanced weapon becomes meaningless with improper application. Welcome to warfare, where one missile costing equivalent of 10 fighter jets used to damage one infrastructure object, where hypersonic technologies wasted on propaganda gestures, where $100 million creates less damage than $1 million of conventional weapons.